And good afternoon once more. I'm Roger Watterson, and this now is the Sunday Mannin line. Now, this is the part of our Sunday where you can join in. We'd like to hear from you, please. This is your views, your comments on virtually any subject of your choice. But of course, we have with us today Bill Dale, who's the chief guru of the Beach Buddies, and he has been on the earlier Sunday Opinion programme talking about their work and the issues of marine pollution, particularly with plastic. And no doubt we'll carry on talking about some of it as we go through the Mannin line. So we'd like to hear from you. The telephone number is 66 13 68, and you can text to 166177, or you can email to studio@manxradio.com. Now, there's a call or two coming in now. For those of you who are making it, could just hang on. Catherine will be with you in just a couple of minutes, and then we can take those calls. So, Bill, before we do that, we'll go to an advert break in a second or two, but there's one or two quite interesting texts and emails come in, and this is from Neil, who says that he really enjoyed today's presentation. I walk the Silverburn River on a regular basis, and the amount of plastic debris is so sad to witness. I've tracked the main source to the new development at paddocks at Rushen Abbey, cement and empty plastic sand and gravel bags, also spent mortarboards, and also fertiliser bags from farmers and general plastic debris. I tackled a couple of the labourers about using the adjacent river as a convenient dump, but met with a totally negative response. I think that there should be a much greater scrutiny from government, that is the Environmental Inspectorate.
Interesting. Yeah, we do find fair bit of industrial waste, as you might call it. In fact, one of the things that's happened quite a lot recently, which I actually made a point of on Facebook, was that there are some builders around, and I don't know who they are, and I don't know whether they're from the immediate area, but they have started, some of them have started dumping their junk in our bins. Because things like tiles and empty bags I found an empty bag of cement yesterday in one, and the incident which sparked this off in particular, I've said nothing about it for a couple of years, was when somebody had thrown some tiling plaster into a bin at Langness, and then as we opened it on a windy day, this was all over the place and in our eyes and everything. And at that point I thought, right, that's enough, and somebody is going there to save themselves a couple of quid at the amenity site where they have to pay to dispose of these things, and they're looking on us as a dumping ground, and we now have got people looking out for these things. And in fact, in some of the parts, we are about to install some CCTV little mini cameras, because it's got to the point where, it's naughty. That's not on that, just to save themselves a few quid. The construction industry, whatever anybody says, is doing fine. I've worked in the construction industry when things were tough a few years ago, and I'll tell you, there's loads of work around, and there will be forever. So this nonsense about keeping the construction industry alive through the government pouring money into it is nonsense. These guys are doing great. They can all afford to take these things to the community sites. So that really is not on.
Right, now we'll go to a break in a second or two, but just got one here which is also an interesting point. It says, what about McDonald's being told to include the registration plate on the packaging from the drive-through so it can be traced to the owner if necessary?
That's interesting, because by sheer coincidence this week I've been in touch with some people I know in Silicon Valley in California to see if they can come up with something clever so that when anybody buys something in a supermarket, as you know now, you either scan your Tesco ShopRite card before the items go through. What about if they were to identify the individual from that, and somehow you would have that transferred onto the piece of food or whatever you buy with packaging, and then when you find it on the side of the road on the mountain, I mean, this would be fantastic, wouldn't it? And you would know who it was. You would go and knock on his door and say, can I give you this back? By the way, here's a bill for 1,000 quid for a fine. You'd stop it then. I think we've got to deter this small number of people. These are the ones that you've got to try and get to. And if we can't do that, as I said before, let's get rid of the packaging that's damaging. And if they do throw stuff out the window, at least it's going to be biodegradable or compostable.
You might find a few cries of Big Brother here if you did that, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but who cares? I mean, I've always thought, this thing about Big Brother. If you're a bad guy, then you don't like Big Brother. But if you're a decent person, then who cares if you're being watched? because you're not doing anything wrong.
Now, this is not your only performance today. You have a matinee this afternoon, haven't you?
So I'm told. I've been invited to speak at Arbury Church Hall this afternoon. I was there a couple of weeks ago and they've organised another event, but apparently I think you said in the break that there's something changed there.
I've got an email in front of here from Jane Glover, and she says, due to a double booking at the Arbury Parish Hall, the Commissioner's open event, which Bill Dale of Beach Buddies is attending between 2:30 and 4, will be a few doors away at the, I think it's Halley McClaig meeting room rather than the Parish Hall. Please let Bill know.
Thank you very much. All right, I shall be there. I think it's only a few yards away, isn't it? I don't actually know that hall, but okay. Thank you, Jane.
Okay, let's take the break. Welcome back to the Mannin line. We're here until 2 o'clock, and we would like to hear from you, please. The telephone number is 66 13 68, and you can also text to 166 177, or you could email to studio@manxradio.com. I'd like to hear from all of you, please, on anything else that you'd like to do. Now, that was an interesting thing about McDonald's packaging, isn't it? But when you look at so many things that come out now that are in some sort of throwaway packaging, it's quite surprising. We have now on the phone, we have our first caller of the day, and that's Fenella. Good afternoon. Good afternoon to you, Fenella.
Good afternoon. I'd like to say about recycling of plastic. Now, in Peel, we have 3 places we can recycle all our stuff, but no plastic. You have to go out to the amenity centre to do that, which is only at St John's. And if you're young, fit and have your car, that's fine. But a lot of people are elderly, and they would be inclined to just, if there was a place there to recycle their plastic, well, it's mostly plastic bottles, isn't it? Because lots of other stuff doesn't. They wouldn't put them in the bin and clog it up. They pop them in the recycling thing because they're very good. Most people are very good, I see, at recycling other things. I'm quite good at recycling. I do go out to the amenity centre sometimes and get rid of my plastic bottles. It's all nearly always full. I get there. I struggle to get them in, but I do it. And I just think that if it was easier to recycle plastic, that you wouldn't find plastic bottles lying around all over the place.
Do you mean different types of plastic to plastic bottles? Is that what you're meaning?
Well, any kind of plastic, really, because it's not really good to burn it, is it? Or
no, you're right. I mean, that should be the last resort, really. I know that there's been talk about trying to find different boxes to put different types of plastic in, because not all, the bottles are the ones that are recyclable.
Yes, I know
and pretty
that.
much everything else is not. So I suppose that's taking it another step. I'm not sure of the technicalities of all of that, but all recycling has got to be good. And I suppose if last resort means that you burn it and it makes electricity, then it's not actually perfect, but it's better than doing nothing with it at all, So
Yes,
it's certainly better than landfill, because if you go to the United Kingdom, then there's massive landfill. It's enormous everywhere.
Well, that's terrible anyway. But and then they get smelly, and people have all kinds of complaints about them. But I just think if they would just, you can put a box out that only whatever container that only takes bottles because it'll fit the bottles in.
But you know what? I think you're doing the right thing, because you're highlighting it and actually saying it. I mean, you come on air to say this, and it's a lot of people are going to be listening. So there's a lesson in this that we should all be saying this to our local authorities and our commissioners and our politicians, and saying to people, we want things to change, because things will change then. And of course, there are elections. They come up fairly often. So if people become more green, the candidates become more green, then things will definitely change. So my advice to you was to just keep saying things like this and say it to everybody,
I
shops
do,
and everywhere.
On about things.
Good on you.
Yes, but and the other thing is, when I do go out, well, not now, because they've got a different kind of thing. You've got to put your bottles in the holes. When you go out to the amenity centre, there's things like black plastic in the
at St John's, certainly, yes.
The tub, whatever it is, the skip, and all kinds of stuff that shouldn't be in there.
Yes.
I think, well, what's the point of that then? It's all got to go to the incinerator.
Well, at least they're trying. That's the point. And St John's is the best. I think they're the only ones that take these hard plastics like we find fish boxes and buckets. I think that's the only amenity site at the moment that's doing that. So maybe it'll spread if people like you and I keep shouting out about it. Well done.
Yes, well, I do bang on about things. I do know people go, oh. Anyway, thank you very much.
Okay.
Fenella. Thank you for joining us, Fenella. Thank you. Bye-bye. Right, yes. Talk about these boxes, mind you, Douglas Corporation. Well, is it corporation or is it the government department? But it's little boxes, they leave them outside the house. I've often thought that those are probably fairly inadequate ways of doing it. You see somewhat more substantial bins away for recycling.
I suppose so, but you've got to start somewhere, haven't you? I know when I was in California, I've got family out there, and I stayed with some friends not far from San Francisco. They've been recycling things like that for a very long time, and they divide everything up into about 5 or 6 different containers. They actually get paid a small amount of money, but then it's a huge scale, Therefore, if you're dealing with millions of people, obviously there's a financial return on that. So that's the problem with places like the Isle of Man and islands and generally, And we're changing things here. It's a big step forward to make that change. But we're, on some areas like that, we're a fair bit behind other countries.
At least the landfill, like at the north, when there was at the tip up there.
Oh, it's terrible. Yeah.
Plastic bags would be floating in the breeze.
It was awful.
It was terrible, wasn't it?
It was awful, yeah. And thank goodness we've got rid of that. There's a small amount of landfill. I think the bottom ash that comes out of the energy from waste plant goes to Turkey Land, I think it is, quarry down near the airport. But it's not a lot. So, on that basis, we're doing pretty well.
Might I make a suggestion to those people who organise sponsorship for charities, says Ruth? Rather than using time and energy on athletic feats, perhaps they could ask for sponsorship for litter collection instead. I organised a sponsored clean-up of Guernsey about 20 years ago, and it was amazingly successful. Well done, Bill Dale. You're doing a fantastic job.
Well, that's very nice. And that hopefully, and what I do find more and more is that people are phoning up or sending a message to say, we want to give you the proceeds. There's a lady who's going to walk the parish walk for us this year. That sort of thing, just not only does it give you a small donation, but it raises awareness. That's what it's all about, and people start thinking.
Well, somebody doesn't agree with you when you said the building industry is doing well. This chap thinks that the building industry isn't. He says many Manx tradesmen out of work due to the influx of cheap Eastern European workers. Well, I can't substantiate that one way or the other, but he says they're working for less than the approved minimum rates.
That's news to me. I hadn't heard that at all.
I have heard quite a few smaller builders and other companies saying that the industry they're held up not doing so well due to planning restrictions.
I don't know.
Yeah, right. Okay. Right, now we have another caller on the line now. It's Howard. Good afternoon, Howard.
Hi, Roger. Hello, Bill.
Hello.
Congratulations on all the work you've been doing over the years.
Thank
been
you.
Worth every second of it. But one thing, I just thought about with you being on the radio, right tip up there in the Ayers.
Yes.
Now, I have to admit it's a little while since I've been up that neck of the world. What are the potentials, say, with the natural coastal erosion up there now? Say, certainly won't be in my lifetime, and I don't know, it could be many, many years in the future, of a tide of rubbish being, with the coast being eroded, of being washed out to sea.
Right, okay.
Has there any coverage on that? Has there been any...
It's a question I've been asked a few times, to be honest, and we're up there on a fairly regular basis. From what we can see, just through visually looking at it, that the point at which the landfill ended is still quite a long distance away from the coastline there, and by chance, I'm sure this is just by chance, it's not in the area where there's a lot of coastal erosion. Most of it is down the Cranston area around that on that little point that sticks out before you get to Ramsey Beach. So the majority of the serious erosion I've seen in the last 15-20 years has been there. And the part where the landfill is, there's been next to nothing. So I think it's going to take something fairly dramatic and unique for it to it's a long distance, I think, before it gets to there.
But it's something I was just wondering, just crossed my mind there this morning, whether when they instigated that landfill site, whether they'd forethought of the possible problems for the future.
I think
but
they
as you
did,
say,
yeah.
The erosion is minimal.
Yeah, I think they did. I mean, the great thing would be if somebody finds a way of making money out of the stuff that's already in the ground, and then they'll start digging it up and turn it into money. But, that's a bit of a dream. But, one day, you never know.
You never know. Okay, well, thanks for that, Bill.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, then. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Howard. Bye-bye. Right, another caller on the line, but we'll come back to that in a moment when Catherine's spoken to them. In the meanwhile, Bill, you have mentioned it to me before that there's an alliance proposed with the environment ministers from the Crown dependencies,
yes,
Guernsey and Jersey,
yes,
to replicate Beach Buddies. But the words used to use when I spoke to you was replicate Beach Buddies around the world.
Yes.
Well, how can the three Crown dependencies do that?
Right, okay. I'm not just talking about Jersey and Guernsey. This is all of the environment ministers from those.
They came for the last conference.
They came to the conference, and there was about 34 of them, something like that. Now, I was asked to meet them. They stopped for a brief sandwich at Milltown on one of their days they were here, and I was just asked to meet them. And then Jeffrey Booth said, "Would you like to give a little presentation?" And I thought, well, this is a great opportunity to set up the possibility of an alliance, and I suggested it. And I told them the story of Beach Buddies in a few minutes, and then asked them would they be interested in taking this on to replicate it around their islands, and then we could all get together and speak as one voice, and then you've got some weight behind you, because you're talking about Caribbean islands and Tristan da Cunha and here, there, and everywhere. I mean, they're all over the world. Imagine if we were all to get together, and then that would really increase the weight of the story, instead of the Isle of Man trying to set this precedent. You've got to be realistic about what you can achieve, but if you can do it with more people on board and more islands, then we've got more of a chance.
What was the first reaction?
Oh, they thought it was a good idea, a really good idea. And I've had quite a few emails and I've taken all of their emails and got contacts with them all. From what I can see, 100% of them are on board to try and do something about this. So that's the plan, is that this year they work on that, and by the end of this year, maybe this time next year, we can actually go to the places like the States and Europe and say, look at what can be achieved. Get your act together. This is not just one little island. This is everybody together.
Could be a problem coming up because China's closed its doors to plastic imports, hasn't it?
Yes, and I have to say, I didn't know that China seemed to be importing pretty much the world's plastic and
scrap. Yes,
yeah, their scrap. Yeah, and I didn't know that was the case until that story hit the headlines. It just shows you really that nobody is coming up. Nobody's thinking enough about it. But let's hope that this David Attenborough effect, as we keep talking about, and the Queen effect has said something on the back of that, because they're the same age. David Attenborough, both 91, both good friends and have been for a long time. And clearly, and I know I've read things about the Queen going out into Buckingham Palace and complaining about litter coming over the walls,
She seemed interested enough in your work.
She sent me a message, which I very fortunate to be invited to the garden party last year, and I just thought, out of courtesy, I'd send a reply, and she clearly researched what we're doing and sent a very nice reply back to say that she's following us and really liked what we were up to. So how nice is that? Good.
Just a comment here: if you want to catch people throwing rubbish out of their car windows, go up to Douglas Head any lunchtime. It happens on many occasions.
Do you know what? I actually spotted two lads in a car one lunchtime, sort of early 20s, late teenagers. And they were doing the classic out through the window. They hadn't spotted me, and they chucked it out the window to try and get it somewhere near the bin. And, of course, it missed. So I picked it up and went back to the lad, and he wound his window down. I said, "Listen, I think you've dropped this, mate." He got out of the car, and to be honest, he was looking for a scrap. And I thought to myself, wow, this is really hit the nerve here. But how nasty that he was aggressive. So I would suggest that anybody who sees that happening, just be careful about who you choose, because some of these people can get a bit nasty about it, because you're making them feel guilty, really.
It also comes back to attitude of mind.
Well, yeah, but you're right, though. I've been up here many times and seen that sort of thing happening. Douglas Head is pretty bad.
Well, that was a comment by Davy. And now we've got Vivian on the line. Hello, Vivian.
Hello, Roger. Can I just talk to Bill, please?
Please, he's here.
Bill, I think you are aware we have a problem in Solby Glen with the amount of litter that's dropped there. And we have one gentleman who is very kind and every now and again goes out from top to bottom and collects the rubbish there. And we've tried to think of ways to discourage it, but I don't think we've come up with the actual answer yet. And that is also a place where people like to dump fridges. Now, you were talking about a barcode. Is there a barcode on fridges?
I think you probably find there's some way of identifying it, because when these things are stolen, the police tend to find who owns it, and then and you know, they'll know where it came from. So I'm pretty sure these things have got some form of an identification on them and a serial number.
Well, as you can imagine, it falls on the local ratepayer to foot the bill, and I just thought it might be one way of trying to solve some problems.
Yeah, no, I like that. I mean, of course, if you're thinking like a criminal, then you probably rip the registration code or the whatever identification off it. Yeah. But the chap you mentioned who cleans up in Sulby, what a star he is.
He is.
And I know he's not the only one. In fact, there's lots of people who are doing similar things, and they don't want any publicity out of it. I mean, your man in Sulby is not seeking publicity. He's just doing it through goodness of his heart.
We have given them a lot of... I'm on the commissioners, and we have given them a lot of publicity.
Good. Well, I mean, and if that makes other people, and I know for a fact that there's loads of other people doing similar things. There's two friends of mine, a husband and wife, who are cleaning up Molly Quirk's Glen in Onken, because it backs onto their house, you know. And I went up and gave them litter pickers and bags, and I know there's quite a few people who have adopted beaches, and they wouldn't want their names mentioned because they just want to do it. And
well, that's why I didn't.
There's a lot of that.
Name, but I mean, so we are fully aware of the gentleman, and we've had conversations with him and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But the other place that we suffer, usually with televisions or fridges, is the back road to the Kellier. You know, going from the Kellier farm right out through to the Clonnock Road.
Oh,
and
right.
there's a nice ditch there.
Really? I've not seen that.
Well, it's a rough road, but if you're down through there, that's where they like to also dump things. And as I say, wherever these things happen in the island, it falls back on the ratepayers to get rid of it.
It does, yeah. I mean, what I will say is this new campaign we've started in the schools on the 23rd of March is going to be rolled out to all of the schools across the island. So there's no reason at all why every single parent of children and grandparents and uncles and aunties and everybody can't then this year get involved in this Love Where You Live campaign, so that people can... You know, you don't have to go to a beach or a glen. You can go to wherever you want to, or just clean up outside your own street. It's going to be such an easy thing to do, and we can all be on side and let this happen.
Yes, I know. Well, fortunately, we've got a wonderful Northern Civic Community site, and it's not hard to get there and get rid of all your recycling problems, because they have a wide selection there, so it works well.
Good.
Okay, Vivian, thank you
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Yes, I think, see, that's a comment which ties in with what she just said. She's from the local authority.
Yes.
I think Douglas Council are just saving money by letting you go out and litter picking, as they can save money by not paying their staff.
No, and I'll tell you what, when we had all the conversations about this quite some time ago, the initiative came initially from ourselves to Douglas Corporation, and they could not have been more supportive. And it's not because we're doing it for nothing, because, you know, okay, this is extra to what's happening. And more to the point, this is campaigns not just for Douglas. This is to try and have an impact right across the Isle of Man. Douglas is by chance, because they've taken an initiative and joined in with us and offered their support, and they're going to bring staff along and their wagons and everything, and give us gear and whatever. This is something which is going to spread around the island. So, you know, good on Douglas Corporation for getting stuck in at the very beginning. And let's face it, places like Annacor and Douglas and Pulrose, let's face it, over the years, they've had flack from everybody in society in the Isle of Man. This is a fantastic opportunity for them to say, look at what we've done, and set an example and say, you know, we're going to do something special here, and see if everybody else follows suit. So good on them.
Do we get much fly tipping?
There used to be a lot. It comes in spells, doesn't it? The worst I've seen is just down the road here at Marine Drive. Every time we come up here, we'd normally come up here in the summer. Of course, you wouldn't even dream this time of year when it's like this. But when we come in the summer, we do find a fair bit of stuff dumped over the side of like Pigeon Point and places like that.
Yeah.
And again, it's, you know, the guy talked about the construction industry, but I've seen loads of things like bricks and bags of cement and stuff just dumped over the side. It is, as always, in all these things, just a small number of people who are messing it up for everybody else.
Jeff says that he's not into being green himself, but he wants to know why the government... Now, this goes over three things we've already talked about in the one question, but okay. Why is government ripping Joe Public off with charges on plastic? Why don't government stop plastic being used in the food industry? End of problem. Start with bottles and make them glass. Jeff. So in other words, what he's saying is that we could remove a lot of the problem at source.
We could do, and thank God people like Phil Taylor has done that with his restaurants, and that's where it'll start, because once somebody starts, for a long time, ShopRite were not going to remove their single-use plastic bags, but I mean the tide has changed. They've been against it for quite, well, not against it, but they've been slow in introducing it, and now they're getting involved. So, and the next one, of course, is the Co-op. They'll be the only ones left who are giving away free plastic bags in supermarkets, that is. So, there's a bit of pressure on them now. Let's hope they follow suit.
Local authorities need to replace the ridiculously impractical blue and green recycling boxes with something more useful, which is where we came in a minute ago. I have no room for them in the house, and they are an eyesore in the tiny garden. They're inclined to blow away and fill up with rainwater. I don't use mine, as I don't want recycling items hanging about in the garden in open boxes, and I've nowhere inside to store it until collection day. Not many ordinary people live in spacious houses. Everyone I know in the UK has a proper bin with sections and a lid, which would be ideal for me.
Yes, I sympathise with that, because if you haven't got the space, these things they're not exactly pretty, are they? And I know somebody who was in Douglas who had these things sitting around in the garden for ages, and they are pretty messy.
Right, let's take a break. And welcome back to the last part of today's Man in Line. With me in the studio is Bill Dale BEM. He's the man behind the Beach Buddies here in the Isle of Man, and we've been talking about a number of things and a number of texts and emails. And I'm pleased to say, Bill, we've got 11 minutes to go. We've got a lot of phone calls coming in.
Good.
But could Bill indicate which milk container is best, plastic or cardboard, for recycling?
Well, is there a choice between plastic and cardboard? I'm not so sure. I think the plastic bottles, and the other ones are cardboard of sort, but they've got a plastic coating over them, I think. But I would go for the non-plastic option, yes.
Right, okay. QB car park is horrendous for McDonald's rubbish out through the windows. It's just a comment.
Yeah, that's like that all the time.
It's great, this is Michael Starkey, it's great to see Ramsey North Shore clear from objects and other things washed up now that the new sewage plant is working.
Yes, perfect. In fact, that cost, I think it was 16 million, is a lot of money. The great thing about that is that it's trapped all of the wet wipes that used to wash up on the beach. We collected 7,500 in one session one time. Now when we go out, there's only hardly any at all. There's no new ones, there's only old ones getting washed up, so that has made a big difference, yeah.
Right. Bill's correct, says Howard, in what he says about rubbish from cars. Thank goodness the Douglas Council refused the application for a fast food vehicle on the head road. What a mess. That would have been atrocious.
Yeah.
So that's just Plastic is a worldwide problem, and I'm pleased that Bill got his well-deserved award. But it worries me about unseen dangers left by nuclear accidents, Chernobyl and Windscale, which continue to cause problems here, and hill lands of Ireland. The Isle of Man seems to have a higher rate of rare cancers in young people and a rise in early onset conditions. We need a full-scale inquiry to find out what threats our young people in the future are going to face from these dangerous materials. That's Robin Peel.
Okay.
Well, there's been a debate for a long time, hasn't there? We've heard things about all sorts of horror stories, which we've not all substantiated.
I know, and the problem is sifting out the truth out of all of this, isn't it? And there seem to be smoke screens here, there, and everywhere. What a difficult subject, but I obviously can't give an answer to something like that.
I think we've got Deborah on the line. Hello, Deborah.
Hello.
Yes, Deborah. Good
Hello.
afternoon.
Hello. Firstly, congratulations to Bill for all he's done.
Thank you.
I've heard this morning your programme, very, very interesting. I'd like to say about milk, basically, although it affects all fatty foods that have been wrapped for many years in plastic. I'm 71, and back in the early 80s, when my two children were quite young, over in England, on the evening news, one evening, in BBC News it was, I think it was a Norwegian study, they proved that the estrogen from plastics was seeping into fatty foods, and they said that it was far better to have get rid of the plastic wrapping problems, because when I was a child, we had milk in glass bottles.
Yes.
We also had Sainsbury's with greaseproof paper around fats and cheese and different things. And suddenly the plastics came in. But as I say, in the early 80s, this was on the BBC News, in evening news, they were saying that it would be far better to get rid of all the plastic wrappings because the estrogen was seeping into fatty foods, and particularly meat, cheese, butter, milk. And consequently, after that, I thought, oh, this is good, perhaps I'll get rid of... Of course, they didn't get rid of things because they got all the expense of all the new machinery in operation already.
Yeah, it's interesting because people are starting to think about these things now, whereas 5-10 years ago they weren't. Just, one of the problem with society is that... And businesses is that they're pretty much able to do whatever they think and then wait for the consequences sometime down the line, and that is it's immoral, and that's the way the world is, very sadly.
Yeah.
And how fantastic that people like yourself and also many, many more are now actually not accepting what they're told anymore. We're investigating it ourselves, we're asking questions, and we are making... It's the community that's doing this. We are making things happen and changing things simply by getting together and talking about it and not accepting anything. I tell my daughter all the time, don't trust anybody, don't believe anybody. Everybody is up to something, and just be very careful and don't accept statistics anymore.
That's
Research it for yourself and find out.
Well, the other thing that I'm wondering, all these health fanatics say that skimmed milk or lower-fat milk is better. Well, I don't believe it. We've had full-fat milk all our lives. I'm sure a farmer would tell you to drink full-fat.
But then one day they tell you that coffee's good for you, and then it's bad for you, or chocolate's good for you, chocolate's bad for you. And if you read nonsense like the Daily Star, I never buy rubbish like that. But if you look at the headlines in there, it's just absolute pathetic nonsense. So it's for us all, and you can research these things pretty well these days. So and choose and make a decision for yourself. And then if you don't like the product in the shop and you think it is dodgy, don't buy it. And soon enough they'll get the message.
But I think it's a shame that you have the plastic bottles of the milk, well, not just full fat, all milk, alongside the cartons, which I always buy. I can't understand why the creamery doesn't just do the cardboard cartons unless the plastic cartons come over from the UK. I don't know.
I think you'll find they're trying to change it, and Finlay MacLeod will tell you that, because they've introduced those only in the last few years. So I think they are trying to make a change. I don't think there's any question they're not forcing plastic on us. They're actually trying to make us change.
Anyway, Deborah,
good.
Deborah, thanks for joining us, Deborah.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Now, believe it or not, we've got 4.5 minutes to go, and
Okay.
we've got 4 or 5, and we've got a phone call in here, another one coming in,
Okay.
I think. And but Doug Sandel is listening to us in Leeds. And Doug says, regarding people dumping waste at Douglas Head, shouldn't that be a criminal offence, dumping rubbish on public land and spoiling the Manx environment and causing potential health hazards? I think the answer to that is it is. You've got to catch them.
I think there's a pretty hefty fine, but you're right, you've got to catch them, and that is the problem, yeah.
Yes. Can the cardboard cartons be recycled? That's the milk cartons.
I don't know the answer to that one, sorry.
Santon Commissioners stopped recycling in April, and its residents are still awaiting them to inform what is to replace it. That's in Santon. And I find it particularly annoying about plastic bags with the Co-op. It's only yesterday when paying for my shopping, the assistant never even asked if I wanted a bag. Before you have a chance to say you have one of your own, they've bundled all your shopping into at least one of theirs.
Yeah, that does happen, yeah. I have seen that, yeah.
Right now, Andrew, good afternoon to you.
Hello, Roger. Hello, Bill.
Hello.
I could answer probably quite a lot of those questions, but we haven't got time now. The main thing I was going to phone up about, wearing my Zero Waste Man hat on, is that, as Bill said, we've got to actually stop, first of all, the plastic being made in the first place.
Yes.
Obviously, if we, like the previous woman said, that if we stopped wrapping so much stuff in plastic, that would be a start. But in terms of disposal of it, if we had a system where we could take it back to the shops, that would be ideal because it would save on journeys.
Yes.
Because if you're going back to the shop, if you could take something back with you. But unfortunately, you need to make things easy for people over here. And the Bring system, although that is more sustainable than a curbside system, a lot of people will not take stuff to a Bring bank, even if it's only a few hundred yards away. They would rather throw it in their bin than actually go to the trouble of taking it there. So, which is why the curbside system, not ideal, not the best system in the world, but it's better than anything else we've got.
The good thing though is that everybody like yourself is just talking about this now, and people are coming up with ideas. And every week that we have a beach cleaning session, afterwards we spend 5 or 10 minutes. People hang around, and everybody's got opinions and views and ideas, and lots of these things are really good. And the great thing is that everybody's thinking about it now. So, okay, some people probably whatever you did will never take it on board because they're too lazy, they don't care or whatever. So it's for others to set an example until these things become second nature. And I think that, as I've said many times in this last couple of hours, it's a lot to do with children and education.
It is, but Bill, in terms of all the people that are talking about it, they need to do more than that. They need to speak to their local authority members and tell them they want the introduction of a curbside solution.
I agree. Chase them, and things will happen.
Yeah, because at the moment a lot of people say, "Oh, it's too expensive to do."
Good man.
It's cheaper than refuse disposal. So
yes,
that's what we need to do.
Yeah, I'm on side there.
Andrew, we're running out of time now, so thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Very quickly, Beastie calls. She says, a huge thank you to the Ale and Dairy in the north of the island for delivering milk in glass bottles, which are returnable.
Yes.
And a final comment, which I think is probably a good point almost to end on, Bill. It's nothing to do with the specific situation, but Elizabeth called and she said that her mother used to tell a story about when she was living in Cheltenham. There was a man in a car filling up a cigarette case and threw the empty packet out of the window. A lady picked it up and gave it back to him saying, "I think this belongs to you." And he said, "I didn't want it." His reply was, "Well, neither does Cheltenham."
Mm-hmm.
So at the same, these days, people do throw things out of their car windows because they don't want it. But she says, we don't want it either.
No.
So there we are. So there's a
That's
point
very,
there,
very
really.
nicely put. Yeah,
Yes.
very good.
Right. Well, Bill, we're right at the end of the programme. What's the Beach Buddies' next event?
Okay, we're going out at the moment every Saturday and Sunday, and because of the storms this last week, then we'll be doing that for a little while to come. The easiest way to find out is to go onto our website, beachbuddies.net, or we have a Facebook page, which is dead easy to find. The nice thing is we now have a brand with and a great that we've got a sponsor, FIM Capital, which has just made such a difference to us. But easy to find out on a website or Facebook.
And what if somebody wants to contact you by phone?
496560.
Bill Dale BEM, thank you for being our guest on both Sunday Opinion and the Mannin Line today.
Thank you.
Catherine Nichol was on the switch. I'm Roger Watterson, and she and I will be back next week. Until then, goodbye.